guys, it's Matt Lemke here with True Gamer goggles. Wow, I need food.
The beauty of editing.
I'm here with Vito Pandolfo.
Vito Pandolfo.
From 50 Epoch. It's still publishing.
Yeah, still publishing, yes.
All right. And we're going to talk about all their games. And we're going to start with Battlefield Ops combat system, which is really, I just watched a demo for about 3 hours. And for those of you that know me, for me, watching is not my forte. And they managed to keep me going. So it's actually quite a cool system. What sets Battlefield Ops apart from other systems?
So a few things. The first thing is that one thing that we disliked about war games always was this whole notion of you go, I go, you fire, I fire. And one thing I never felt was simulated in war games was the fact that the commanders and the troops during the battlefield, during the battle, are subject to cognitive shutdown. They freeze up, they get stuck, they don't get information, they don't get live data. It isn't always sequential. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we did with the rule system to help simulate that experience, and not do what we do at cons. When we're at cons, we're having fun gaming, right? We're metagaming, we're looking at the whole table, we're playing around with each other. But when you're playing the Battlefield Ops system, which used to have a different name, that's why we see these box games set. It used to be box battles. We're shifting the name over. We can talk about that in a minute. But we use a command card system that isn't guaranteed. Everybody doesn't always get a command. There's a probability that you can get a command, but not guaranteed. So, when you get a command, it's precious. You have to decide what's first, second, and third priority on the battlefield. That was a key component you saw. We don't have unit cohesion rules because of the way the movement rules are. Units can separate on the battlefield and you can lose cohesion that way. You will not necessarily get all your units to bear to fire. There's the spotting rules that will make a big difference, and as you saw in the last demo, first shot matters a lot. Yeah, what you guys are seeing right now is these are all the tables that are actually used at the game. These three on the back of the rule book. Yep. We occasionally look in the book in order to research something, but for the most part, one thing we did was everything you need is right here, as you saw. Yeah. Right. So.
And it's really super simple. It's based off basically how fast you were moving, from what I gathered. I mean, that's the easiest way to explain it without watching the game.
Yep.
And then you have a base number that you start at and modify from there.
Yep.
And it's pretty simple.
Yep.
I saw these two gentlemen play for about 3 hours, and I just watched, and I feel like I could actually pick up the box set and teach somebody else how to play. So for a miniatures war game, especially one that I think where they take historical accuracy and realism and balance it with a good game system, it's super easy to pick up, super easy to learn, and a lot of what appeals to me actually is it's about the tactics that are on the table, and that includes the command cards. Like if you got 5 units, you shuffle everything into one deck, so there might be 10 cards, right?
Right. Yep.
And then there's an 11th card, Fog of War, and when the Fog of War card's drawn, that stops the drawing of the command cards at the beginning of the turn. So you might get 2 actions while your opponent gets 7. Well, 5. Because in this case it was equal, but it all depends on the scenario. And that's one of the other things that I think is important to note about this. You're not always going to be fighting an equal force.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, the other convention that we experience in wargaming is it's always done as a meeting engagement head-to-head, right? It's always going to be, you have 1,000 points, I have 1,000 points, you build your army, I build my army, let's go head-to-head and beat each other. That's okay for tournament play, and that's fine. But that's not how the real battlefield really works. The way the real battlefield works is, if I'm going to attack you, I'm always going to do it with a superior force. There's no question about it. You may or may not know I'm going to attack you, so if you do know, you're going to be in a defensive position. You're going to have advantages by being in a defensive position, and I'm going to try and overwhelm those advantages by having more units come at you. That's the convention of battle, okay? And we're not going to know exact points. We're just going to know, you have a company, therefore I need a battalion. You have a battalion, therefore I need at least a regiment, maybe more, okay? And that's the way this game is designed to set up. When we set up our games, we pick our scenario type, and then we have forces that match based on the scenario type, but it's never exact. And as you were talking about before, you can see either side win and play the same game over and over again, and it can unfold a dozen different ways, right?
Easily.
I mean, that was one of the things you had pointed out that you thought was interesting. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Definitely the replayability is amazing. I mean, you can set up the same table, and because of the way the command deck works, it can unfold differently every time. Even if you set it up to unfold the same way on the first turn, the following turns will all be different because the deck is random.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And the deck is interesting because one thing I wanted to say about the deck is, and I think this can be easily misconstrued, is it's not completely random. Yeah, when you grow your force, right, you grow your decks, and your decks have certain types of commands built within, and depending on whether you're playing a NATO force or a Warsaw Pact force, that your deck builds differently. So even though we're drawing random cards, you're building that deck with a certain probability in mind. You're trying to get more of that certain types of commands built in there, so whenever you pull cards, you're going to pull better cards. And you see that different in both sides, right? You can actually see
you can see that, and there's different flavors to the different armies.
Yeah.
Because they allow for different actions to happen too. But one important to note, I think, about the command deck is the fact that when you get your command, whether it be a whole company command or just a single squad's command, you assign them a particular type of action, and I think that's where a lot of the strategy can come into play, because there's really three or four different actions.
Yeah, there's only 3 types of command actions in the game, and I won't go into the details, but almost as you could see today, just about every type of battle command that you want to issue is going to fall into those 3 general categories, right? You can see it. Okay. So the other thing, you asked me a question earlier, and I think this kind of speaks to it, is what else is different about our game? I really do not like the metagaming that we see at the game table. And players can see, even if you're a really fair player, let's face it, guys, we see the battlefield unfold. We try, and you can't help it, you get biased. If I know you're going to send your forces over there, I'm going to try and counter that.
Right.
Okay. So the command structure that we're talking about, the units, once you assign a command, they are committed to that command unless you can give them another command. So even though the player may know that that the unit's walking into an ambush, the unit does not know that, and that creates a whole different level of tension at the play table. Yes. And I think that's what you were saying, that you say the level of tension you experience knowing that your units are walking into a trap potentially, and until that first shot's fired, we can't really respond to it. That really would, I honestly don't know, as a designer, I don't know if it fully mitigates it, but I think it probably cuts down metagaming by 80 to 90%.
I think quite a bit, yeah.
Quite a bit. I mean, it really stops that whole metagaming phenomenon and really has you think, oh man, what is next? What's the next priority? How do I respond to this? So it's a test of your mettle, so to speak.
Yeah, and they've really thought about a lot of different things like spotting. Spotting is a big part of the game. Sustained fire, it's not the right term, but
base of fire is what we call it, but
once you make your spot and you've fired, there's a lot of thinking involved in how to maintain that and get bonuses from firing at the same target.
Yes.
I like the auto deployment rules a lot.
Yeah.
So if you hit an APC and people got to jump out, half of them might get out. They put a lot of thought into the realism of the game and balanced it well with rules. There was one other thing that I really wanted. Well, you're planning on some really good, cool stuff like air to ground.
We don't have the air to ground rules out yet. Close air support. We're not talking about high air support because it's a tactical game, right? We're playing at the company level and maybe at the battalion level. But the close air support would be helicopters, and in this particular area would be the A-10 Warthog, and the Su-27 Frogfoot. Those are your air to ground aircraft. And honestly, the reason why we don't have the air-to-ground rules is because people have demanded so many ground unit cards since the game came out. My team and I have been just focusing on getting more and more unit cards out for Eastern Europe, okay? So that's been the big focus. We are working on the air-to-ground rules now, and when they come out, they're going to integrate seamlessly right into the current rule set. It's not a whole new rule set you need to learn. It's the same rule set, same movement rules, same sequence, same command cards. The only difference is that you have one extra measurement for air. That's it. Everything else is the same, right? So we worked hard to make it so that when we add supplements, they slip right in, right? So, and you asked the question about other future things. Now we're going to start releasing the unit cards. Every unit in the game has a specific card that tells you its capabilities. That's not a new convention. That's been in games for a long time. But we're now getting a lot of requests for specific theaters. So we're going to start releasing like Nuremberg, 1975, Norway 1980. Now I'm getting requests for the Yom Kippur and the 6-Day War. So these particular theaters all have unit cards associated with that time period. It's a big one. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep up with that demand right now, which has been rather excellent. So I'm very happy about it. I'm glad that people are contributing, and so that's cool.
I don't know if we said it before, but this is designed to be 6mm.
Yeah, 6mm, 125 scale.
And it's the Cold War. So, how well does it scale up to other scales?
So the box game itself, if you do buy the box game, is one company against one company. It'll scale up to a battalion level fairly well. And once you have a few players that are familiar, you can actually play at the regimental level. So I don't normally recommend that, but you can get the equivalent of 4 box games quickly in scale. You can take what's in here and you can multiply it by about 4 pretty comfortably. All right. After that, you really start needing experienced players. That's probably true for almost any game system out there.
Yeah.
Right. But that's sizable. You can get a great game. You can get a great game, robust game with a lot of scenarios and a lot of playability and a lot of flexibility and a lot of non-replicatability, right, for that level of force. And I think that's for that level of force, and I think that's actually a really good value. That was our intention anyway. So
right now, so let's talk a little bit about how box battles is becoming Battlefield Ops.
Yeah.
I mean, it was already Battlefield Ops, but it's a neat story.
So when we released the game 2 years ago, officially, I had some pre-release copies that people came and bought, but then originally we released the game as a box set, and we released it as a box set because we wanted to take an entire 6mm game, 2-sided, and put it in a box this big. This is one of the demo copies, right? So, and in there is terrain and buildings and all the unit cards and the rule set and the whole works, right? So we released this, sold a good number of them, but in the process, already existing collectors came to us and said, we want to buy your rule components separately. Can you keep expanding the amount of unit cards? So 2 years ago, we had 8 unit cards in this box set. We now have 64. We went from 8 to 64 in 2 years. I have another 30 in the works now. So I know this year we're going to be coming out with 30. So in that process, we realized that while we did release the game as box battles, it's really Battlefield Ops, the rule system that we've been using that people want. So we're going through a brand change, there's some logo changing. The unit cards will get updated with the new logo and the new branding, but you guys will slowly see that. Hey, con announcement. That's what happens at cons. Sorry for that interruption. So now what players will see is what used to be box battles and is partially coined as box battles will start being replaced by Battlefield Ops system, and that's all of it's being branded a new thing, but it's the same rule set. However, there's nothing different about the rule set. The current rule set references elements that are within the box game, but other than a few edits, there's no change in the rules. There's no change in the rule system. It's just a brand change because we realize that the customer wants the rule set, and so I'm very proud of that, and we want to make the customer happy. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. So
right.
If there's any confusion between those two names, guys, they're actually the same game. Oh, and what you have there is a Spiral Bound. We release these free PDFs on the website of updates. So if you do buy the game, these are some updates. This cleans up some of the rules, clarifies some questions that gamers have asked us online, and handles some errata. So there'll be a few of these updates that come out for free, and when there's enough of them, we will then get a new version of a rule book. But that's ultimately what will happen. But in the interim time, you just click on the free update and get the PDF, and you've got your rule set. So that's what that is. That's an update to this. So.
And but what else? What else about the cards? If you buy the card, or if you buy the game and buy the cards and sign up for the mailing list.
You mean the replacement?
Yeah, the replacement.
All right, so yeah, we did come out this year with a product replacement program. Thank you for asking about this. I'm actually very, very happy we did this. So because a lot of players are making contributions to the game and they're starting to affect the way it plays, and we're updating it, we're always trying to improve it. I've always had, as a customer in the gaming industry, I've always had a problem personally with buying something and then having to buy the second version of it and then the third version of it. So we have something called the product replacement program now that we've launched, and if you buy this rule set normally, and we come out with the updated rule set in 6 months, the new rule set will come out to you at about 2/3 off of retail price. So
Nice.
you'll be paying about 1/3 of retail for that, and the same thing with unit cards. So I don't know that that's the exact dollar figure, but that's amount. But it's going to be about that, and the reason for that is because we want customers to keep buying the existing rule set, even though we know new ones are coming out,
Right.
and we want to reward our customers for being loyal and staying with us. So that's the way we're approaching it, and people will receive that so far. So I'm hopeful, and you seem to like that idea as well.
Oh, I
right?
do. I do. I mean, I support. It's support, and support, in my opinion, goes a long, long way.
That's great.
I once made this crazy formula for what makes a game good, and one of the things was support. And people were totally amazed by some of the companies that I thought their game was terrible because their company didn't support the customers well enough.
Interesting.
And you know, and they were big. Some of those were big name companies. No, I'm not gonna fuel any fires here.
Well, what's interesting is, you know, I've been a customer in the gaming world for a lot of years, and what I realized was, you know, what happens to us as customers, right? If we know the company's going to come out with something new, we wait until the new thing comes out.
Right.
A lot of times. But now, as a publisher, I don't need the customer to do that. I need the customer.
Nor do you want them to.
Right. I want the customer to buy the product. So I was trying to conquer this whole problem. How do we do that? And so the product replacement program was the closest thing we could come to that says, I need your money, please spend your money, and as a reward for you spending your money, I'm going to give you some things that you really need to have. And we're all going to keep doing that live so we can keep the hobby moving and keep the support system going. It's a mutual support system, right, in that regard. So that was why we did that.
So I think we're going to move on to RPGs now.
Okay, yeah.
But I've only got one more thing to say about Battlefield Ops, and I think that it is tactically one of the purest game systems I've seen in close to 10 years. I'm big on, I don't like games where I build my army this way and I have to change my meta game up every two months because something came along and totally changed the system. If I want to do that, I'll play Magic the Gathering again. And I love Magic the Gathering for that.
Right, but it's a different game, right?
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Miniature games, I'm about what's on the field, what's on the table. If I make a mistake, I don't necessarily want to feel like I lost the game because of one bad move or because I'm playing a particular unit. I want to be able to play everything I own, which right now, from what I've seen, I think that can be done with Battlefield Ops. So let's talk a little bit about your...
If I may,
go ahead.
One thing. Well, you said about everything you own. One thing that we did in Battlefield Ops that's important, if you're already a minis collector and you're already a collector of 6mm or even 10mm, okay? Every unit you own will have a purpose. Your supply units have a purpose. Your Jeeps have a purpose. If you have recovery units, they have a purpose. If you have medical units, they have a purpose. So most of the time, we're typically used to playing combat elements, but there are a lot of non-combat elements like engineering units and sappers and things like that. Those rules, if they are out or they're in the works, because I want your collection used on the table.
Right.
You understand?
Yep.
You collected them for a reason. We want you to play with them. So
Yes.
as you saw supply units today. You saw supply units today have an effect on
lot of
morale.
them, yeah.
So that, I know we took an extra minute on that, but I wanted to tell you because that speaks to your very point. You know?
Right.
So.
Well, we didn't touch on artillery either. You guys can buy the rules for that one.
How rough is it?
It's not. It takes a little getting used to, and I'd say artillery is probably the most complicated thing you taught us.
But how brutal is it?
As a mechanic, it's destructive. It's what artillery should be.
So, yeah.
I mean, you could get caught underneath the barrage of artillery, and you're suppressed or you're dead. There's not much in between.
No.
So let's move on to your RPGs. Are they both the same game system?
No. Well, so we have two RPGs. We have a game called, and I don't have a copy to show the audience here, but you guys can go to our website when the time comes. We have an RPG that we launched here at Origins in 2007. It's called Metal, Magic, and Lore. It is a fantasy game. It's a very old school kind of style. There are no levels and no classes. in the game. You just ad hoc pick your skills.
That's old school.
Yeah, to make your character, okay? It's percentile-based game. So you roll your percentile or less in order for success. And then we came out with another game 3 years ago called the Vampires Codex, which is a modern vampire game that we licensed from J.A. Dome, a gentleman named J.A. Dome. And they use the same mechanical system. They're different settings and they're different genres.
So,
they use the same, right? So we use the same game engine for both, okay? The Vampires Codex has a little bit more up-to-date edits in it, but they're the same game engine. They're quite compatible. So we released Metal Magic and Lore here 12 years ago. It was well received. Over time, because it's an RPG, it took a long time to build audience. We've always sold direct to customer, always, since we launched. We have released 6 books entirely as well since that, and a whole series of PDFs, GM screens in those product lines.
Oh, wow.
Even a novel series had started based on the Metal Magic and Lore fantasy world. We have a novel out. And now, here we are 12 years later, we're actually bringing those rules up to date. So I'm showing a couple of games during the weekend, showing some older gamers that have come back to play our game with some of the new revised rules, bringing the game current, making it a little more user-friendly for players that don't know how to start a game like that. And that's what we're doing this weekend. So we're playing this game and we're playing that game this weekend, and that's what we're showing. So
wow. So in a fantasy setting, then, I can effectively be a farmer forced into adventuring.
yes, absolutely. In this game, they would be perfectly appropriate in this setting. Yes.
What kind of skills sets how do skills evolve in character creation?
So the way it generally works, well, there's the old school way and then the revised way, right? In the old school way, the game master and the player have a discussion. We give you a guideline in the rule book about how many skills you can pick. There's a list of skills, and you just pick your skills ad hoc as you like based on that discussion. So as long as the game master and the player can agree that this is the right skill package, you just pick those skills, okay?
That's awesome.
So what we discovered is that for players that don't necessarily know about a particular profession or type of character in a medieval fantasy, like someone might say, well, I want to play a hunter-trapper, but I really don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
They don't know what skills to pick. Right, so without the guidance of a good GM, the player is a little bit lost. The revised rules guide that a lot better and show you how to pick those skill packages designed on that, okay? And it also, in the same time, all enfolded in that is, so we also have 3 social classes on our game, a commoner class, a merchant class, and a noble class. And certain professions are better if you're a commoner versus a noble, right? So the commoners know about the streets.
Right.
And they know how to get information from the locals. And they know how to, I think I know where that guy's hiding. I can go find that out, right? Where the nobles know more about etiquette and about international trade and the relations with the next county, okay? So that's a long answer to a short question. But when you're picking your skill package, you have these things in mind as you're constructing your skills.
I like it.
And we didn't do that as well in the original edition. We kind of counted more on the player. But as you all know, since role-playing has evolved in a lot of ways, we're putting in some new revised rules to help that along and bring that up to date.
Right.
And we've tested it in 4 parts of the country. It's been very well received. And this year, those updates will be coming out. So
Thanks. Excellent.
yeah.
What else you want to add?
All I want to say about Metal Magic and Lore is, don't do anything you wouldn't do in real life. Because if you charge into combat, your character will die. You want to work in this game. You want to focus on story. So. Other than that, I guess the website, right? So if you guys want to learn more about us and keep up to date, you can go to 5epochpublishing.com. It's with a 5 T-H-E-P-O-C-H, 5epochpublishing.com. Just go there. We'll have plenty of information on updates. And you can always write us at info@, and there's an info@.
Yep, I
just
saw that.
click on the button. Just write us. My team's great. They'll answer your questions. We keep people informed. Get on our mailing list because we don't write a lot of emails and people want to know what's coming out, and I'm very stoked. I think we made it this far. We've been 12 years out. People say, "Where are you guys?"
That's
And
hard for a micro-publishing company.
well, we do everything through freelancers. I currently have 9 freelancers that are working with the company now. That's actually a secret to our success. Is I don't even work full time for my own company, so we try and keep those costs down, and. Everyone gets paid and everyone works, and we keep the hard costs down so that we can get things out. So that's how we do it.
Excellent. Well, thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Been a good interview.
You guys take care.
Bye, guys. Hopefully you'll see more from him in the future. So what is your next con is HistoricCon?
next con is historic. Where are we? We're in Historicon in July. The next con is Historicon in July in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Or Lancaster, as you guys really say it.
Lancaster. Yeah, I don't say it that way. I'm from Ohio, so. And then after that, nothing until fall, right?
Fall. Then we got Archon out in St. Louis. We have GaryCon up in Wisconsin.
You go to GaryCon?
Yeah, well, we just started to now. GaryCon, we went to Gamehole Con last year, and the RPG events, both games were both overbooked. So Metal Magic and Lore and the Vampires Codex both overbooked for the weekend. So
nice.
So we're gonna go where you guys are demanding that we go. And if I see people overbooking events, then we're gonna put our efforts there, right?
I'm thinking GaryCon maybe next year.
Cool.
I've never been, and role playing is my biggest audience.
Yep.
So
here's Historicon, and then the fall is Fallen. Fallen. Yep. So we have, and Fallen we're gonna actually be doing the Battlefield Ops desert scenario. So that's a new one for people.
Oh, nice.
We've been doing, everyone's seen Europe, but no one's seen.
We're gonna put real sand on the table.
Yeah, that's how we're gonna do it. Throw it on there.
That's what Duke used to do.
It works.
It does. All right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Now, bye.
Hi guys, meet the Nibbles, who's gonna go down. She just decided not to go down my back, so we'll do this for her so she's comfy. Thanks for watching my video, and I appreciate it. Please hit the like button and share it if you know somebody who might be interested. And of course, there's always Twitter and the Facebook thingy, and soon I have a newsletter coming. That'll be down there or in a link below, and my kitty cat loves that idea. So anyway, there was one more thing. Oh yeah, subscribe. Be a part of my community, our community. Let's make it grow together. See you guys at a con somewhere, or a local store, or if I'm driving through the country, maybe a game club. I don't know. You're not going to go knock down my camera. Bye, guys.